Are you in the right place for your homestead, small farm, or estate, but just don't have the land or the resources in order to have things grow? Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg purchased a home that wasn't quite what they wanted. They then purchased the homes around them and developed exactly what they desired. You can do the same with your property plan and acquire a home that grows into the home you've always wanted. Now, this is very important to understand. This isn't about buying mansions like Elon Musk is doing and Mark Zuckerberg did back in 2016. This is about acquiring a piece of property with a little bit of research to understand where there may be a joint agricultural property, where there may be a joint right-of-ways, and other property that you could acquire to expand your footprint. Now, we do this with our design plan because the more land you have, the more labor is required to manage it. The larger your household, the more household management. One example is that if you have a house that's 10,000 square feet and a property that's 5 acres, you're going to need a housekeeper and you're going to need somebody to manage the land, because ultimately there's going to be a lot of landscaping, there's going to be a lot of manual labor, and a lot of effort to just keep up with the basics. Now, I don't want to discourage you, because if you use permaculture design, you'll start with zone 1 in the household and you'll move your way out. And there are legitimate reasons to have a 10,000 square foot house. When I was growing up, there was a family of doctors who had a lot of their extended family at this very, very large house. And it just was a way of accommodating it, rather than each of the family members buying their own $100,000 or $200,000 homes. They bought this $1 million home, lived in it as a community or collaborative, and they hosted a lot of foreign relatives that would visit frequently. So it saved hotel time, it gave them plenty of space to live and work, and ultimately fit really well into their lifestyle. That's really what it is about. You might buy 1,000 square foot home surrounded by a few other 1,000 square foot homes, and eventually end up with one 2,000 square foot home, and the homes around you have been demolished. There's a 200-acre farm that I've consulted with, so they came to me and they had some problems. They had 4 houses on 200 acres. The majority of the 200 acres was agricultural space that was used in the past for conventional agriculture. So the land was degraded. There was a lot of things going on. They had started this intentional community, and what had happened is now these 4 homes had people living in them, and nobody was paying any rent. But ultimately, her approach initially was, the person living in this home is going to do cattle, and the person living in this home is going to do goats, and she was basically setting up a tenement farm. I asked her to step back. What is your plan for this property? You've got 200 acres. It's been in your family for several hundred years. What is your intentions for this property? Do you want it to be your home, like a homestead? Do you want it to be a small farm? Do you want it to be an estate property? And what we settled with was kind of a hybrid approach. She would allow people to live in the homes who would engage in agriculture. However, they had to pay rent. She would hire a handyman to support the property, because those properties, 4 houses require regular maintenance, regular HVAC services and seasonal services. And it was just something that was overwhelming her and making it difficult to even get the farm off the ground. And finally, she was going to develop the land plan and decide what would be grown on her property. There were concerns that the methods that this cattle guy was using was destroying the land, making it even worse. She knew the right way of approaching it, yet this person was kind of doing work for free. And I explained to her that nobody should work for free. The people on her property should get paid for their work. You should get paid for the maintenance and the well-being of the homes and the houses that are on the property. And overall, she should get the tax benefits of having a 200-acre farm. And so we settled on a farm that had a real estate model, and what ended up happening is the cash flow from the 4 homes was significant. In fact, it very often outpaces the income from the agriculture. And that's great, because the first couple of years of establishing this farm, she was able to have a consistent income stream, so she could eventually leave the job she had and work primarily on the farm. Now, I had to get into her head that she is the captain of the farm. I don't want to say the plantation master, but ultimately somebody's got to be the boss, and it might as well be her because she had the most liability, the most risk associated with these properties. Now, this was already a 200-acre farm. We talked about in the plan how to acquire additional lands for right-of-ways, additional lands for forestry, additional lands for other income channels, and the farm turned into a business. Now, it didn't expand past the 200 acres, but of the 200 acres, she was able to gain near 80% utilization of that land in a restorative, regenerative way that makes the property better over time. Each of the 4 houses were then plotted with small gardens, and the folks were encouraged not originally they had this one community garden. She kind of liked the concept of having a lot of people around, but ultimately everybody wanted to farm it differently. Everybody wanted to grow different stuff. Well, now each home has a small garden plot, but ultimately all the grass is mowed by a central service. All the home maintenance is taken care of. All the major transportation on the property is guided by her guidelines, for example, because one of the homes had a 4-wheeler and was just tearing everything up. What kinds of animals come and go from the property are under her overall master plan. And folks agree to the master plan before they come in and rent the property. So she does kind of have elements of a intentional community, but she now has income streams and controls and the protection from legal liability of a landlord. And so what happened there can happen in your space, and maybe you don't want to go that big. Perhaps you just want to get a small house and you want to have a piece of land. Very often in rural areas, you can get a small 300 to 500 square foot house. Now, that's a tiny, tiny house, and you can expand it. I saw this a lot in St. Mary's County with the Amish. They would build a small 1,000 square foot house in a certain design, and then the next year they might add a wing to it, which is basically another house just like the same one. And then the year after that, they have a wraparound porch. And really, you can build into something. My key point here is if you like an area, don't rule out that area. There are examples in Staunton, Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia, all across North Carolina, where people have purchased homes in small towns and then ended up with the 3 to 5 acres they were looking for. In one case, in Hampton Roads, a friend of mine lives in an acre. It's an acre lot. He has a small garden in the back, but right up the road, he bought a large piece of land. I think it was like 23 acres, and he has actually a guy who farms that land and sets aside a plot for him. So basically, he has a small home garden for herbs and everyday vegetables, and then up the road, he has a larger plot that was melons and corn and other stuff that he wanted. And it was managed by someone else most of the time, but ultimately gave him the opportunity when he got off of work, he could kind of go down to the little shed and pull out his little tractor and then scoot around. He liked to drive around in this little tractor with a cart on it and pick vegetables. This is all about what you want. This is all about developing a paradise of your own, your home paradise, your homestead, your estate, your small farm. These all have connotations of your Garden of Eden, your place to go for relaxation, your place to go for rest, your ability to live how you want. Now, there are tax benefits of buying up the land around you and consolidating it. There are efficiencies, like I just talked about in these cases, where you can have a handyman company or a service company get kind of on a cadence and a schedule. Many of my clients are high-income, affluent individuals, and they have household employees. So there's a housekeeper, there's a landscaper or a gardener who works for them on a regular basis. And having a larger managed property with this mindset, with this approach, allows you to come up with the standard operating procedures for the property. And so now you get quarterly HVAC inspections and plumbing inspections. And by the way, you can hire these as a service. You don't need to have an employee. But this regular maintenance maintains property values, cuts off any problems you might have, so you have fewer surprises. It gives you the peace of mind to really enjoy your property and not have to worry about things going bad at an inconvenient time. It helps you with budgeting and planning the things that you want. And more importantly, it helps you implement a plan that you created. Nothing is worse than being in a home that has outside impact, such as barking dogs, noisy neighbors, zoning and variance changes all the time, and other factors that are imposed upon your personal being, your personal well-being. Instead, what's more valuable, and what we talk about at Prosperity Homestead, is your oasis, your staycation location, your everyday enjoyment of a home that serves you. And it doesn't have to be a large square footage home. It could be a 500 or 1,000 square foot home. It could be a 10,000 or 20,000 square foot home. I know of more than a couple of cases where people have had, I got work with a guy, 25 bedroom house. And it was on a 25-acre estate, and the family actually managed almost 500 acres in India. So this is a house in India. It's a house that's set up like a courtyard, and in those 25 rooms, the areas were segmented off into 5 families. So we had his parents, his uncles, his brothers and sisters all living on this big estate. The difference was it was 10 minutes from a major city. So they could basically go down the street, get on a train, go into a major city, and besides, the time it takes for, waiting for the train, they could be in a major city within 10 minutes. So they enjoyed the value and the country and the family collaboration. And this house wasn't a courtyard home. Is like a horseshoe. So it's got a big open courtyard in the middle, and the house is around the edge. So you don't have to actually look at your relatives all the time. But they enjoyed community meals. Every night when people came back in from work, some of the family members were not at all interested in agriculture, and they actually worked office jobs in the city. But every night when people came home, they had fresh food. They had meals on the table. They had a family atmosphere where people just came together and enjoyed their evening or their mid-afternoon meal that was just sensational. Now, because of the economy of scale, several stay-at-home moms were able to prepare the meals with grandma. So there was this cultural exchange. There was an opportunity to entertain the workers of the farm. So there was the courtyard was often used as a venue. And then all in all together, they have built something of value. Now, you don't have to be in India to do that. You don't have to be in China to do that. But understanding the cultural value of that in the United States, you can buy up some of these 21 million homes that the boomers are leaving behind. You can buy up some of the real estate in rural communities and build really a beautiful home where your entertainment comes to you, where you walk out your front door into your Zone 1 garden and you enjoy gardening rather than having it be a chore. The broader acres are managed by someone else, or they are managed by you under a plan that makes the management simple. And ultimately, you end up with a 100-acre estate or a 5-acre estate. It doesn't really matter. You end up with something that you look forward to coming home to. So many people waste resources, time, and money going somewhere for their enjoyment when every day they're miserable in their homes. That's not what we're about here. We're about here, whether you have an acre, whether you have 5 acres, or you have 100 acres, how do you make your small farm, homestead, or estate have the highest utility value? So in some cases, your homestead is cash flowing because you have a home office there. In some cases, your estate is selling off extra plant cuttings. Many estates like Biltmore and Renolda, they actually had nurseries on property, and they would sell off their excess cuttings while taking the majority of the flowers and plants and using it in their own landscaping, thereby saving the cost of bringing in materials and also enjoying the nursery experience. But I could go on about this for days. In fact, we do. If you come to one of our training programs, we go into the specific steps and models that work for small farms, homesteads, and estate to build prosperity, to almost have these properties pay for themselves in a lot of cases, and to ultimately solve those problems that cause a lot of people to just want to leave their house all the time. Not that you got to stay in your house all the time, but ultimately the place you spend the majority of the time should be the healthiest, most enjoyable, and most uplifting place of peace and harmony, and that's what we advocate here at Prosperity Homestead. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. You can visit us and ask your questions at www.prosperityhomestead.org. I want to thank you for listening, and we've been talking about turning your home into a paradise and some of the options you have, if you found the right location, but maybe the home's just not right. You can make it right, you can enjoy it, and you can get more from your small farm, homestead, or estate. Again, thanks for listening.